Hey, my name is Vince with Ustrive.com, and I'm here with Dave Ellefson, and we're going to talk about a few things about kind of where you're trying to get. If you have a passion for music and you want to try to break through in the music industry, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Vince. What's going on, man?
Oh, not much. Couple of things. I just kind of wanted to know what it was like when you were getting started in the music industry. Kind of, striving to get to where you wanted to be.
Right.
Some of the things you had to do, some of the obstacles you had to overcome, and
right.
Some of that.
Well, I'd like to think that after all these years, I'm not jaded and bitter yet. My story is the same as everybody's. I started playing music. I started on my mom's little Wurlitzer organ when I was probably in 2nd or 3rd grade. Took up tenor saxophone in 5th grade when it was time to sign up for band in school. And then for me, really, what I started hearing a lot of rock and roll on the radio on the school bus when I was a kid. Station WLS, I think, out of Chicago. Played like Styx and Sweet and all these kind of rock bands. And then I heard Kiss, and that led me to playing. I took up bass guitar when I was 11, and a lot of people are like, why don't you play guitar? I was like, I don't want to play guitar, I want to play bass. There's a ton of guitar players. Everybody wants to be a singer, and drumming, that's a lot of stuff to move around. So to me, playing bass really was my passion, and so I started at 11. By 12, I was putting bands together with my buddies, and because once you start playing music, you seek out musicians. That becomes your hang. And by the time I was 13, I was playing professionally, meaning people were actually paying my bands, to play. And where I grew up at this little farm town in southwestern rural Minnesota, it was country. People always go, man, you should go do the country gig. You can get paid $50. And it's like, I don't want the $50. You know what I mean? It wasn't about the money. It was about, I want to rock. I want to play rock and roll. And fortunately, I started falling in with guys who could play real good, and they knew how to play Freebird. Back when I was growing up, and they knew Nugent solos, and I was like, yeah, that's how you do that. So fortunately, I think I've always been around older guys. For the most part, and guys who were more experienced than me and better players than me, which always forced me to get better, and which I loved. I like to be mentored, so to speak, and I think that's important, or at least it was for me. That taught me how to write better, taught me how to play better. I seem to have this ability to work well with people. I'm kind of, maybe as a bass player, that's kind of why I'm good in that role, is I seem to have a personality that I always want to bring people together and make things work good for everybody. And because in a band setting, it's just like being on a sports team. There's no I in team. And it's kind of the same way in a band. Even though you might have your star pitcher, your star quarterback, maybe your singer, or your lead guitar player, maybe somebody's a star in the group, and that needs to be recognized and certainly marketed, so to speak. But it takes everybody. A good pitcher, if he doesn't have a first baseman, he doesn't have a good catcher. Right. He's just a star pitcher standing out there with a ball and a glove.
Right.
So that's kind of how I look at the music business. Is I've learned a lot, not just from hanging around musicians, but I think getting integrated into life. To me, life becomes a great source for writing material, for writing songs about, but it's also a good way to kind of look at other walks of life and bring that into the music business. So that's kind of the 101 of my philosophy of how I've worked over the years.
Good. That when you say you started playing professionally at a young age, when you further than that, like when you started putting your demos out and,
right,
and stuff like that to get maybe a deal,
right.
What was that like back then?
Well, keep in mind, growing up in the Midwest where I was at, to go into clubs and ballrooms and things like that, you had to bring your own PA, your own lights. So the costs were unbelievable. We're just broke little teenage kids,
Right.
And fortunately, my parents were real supportive, financially for me, but also just really supportive. I think they saw when I was passionate about playing music, they got behind it, even though they hated the music I was playing. because I don't think any parents like their kids playing heavy metal.
Right.
You know, it's just not part of the plan. But I was just really into it, and so they supported me, which was nice, that I didn't have that obstacle of getting around my parents and that whole thing, because I've certainly seen a lot of guys. You know, so we had to learn a lot of cover tunes, so we were basically playing cover tunes, and we try to sneak some originals in. And, you know, that was why when I was 18 I moved out to L.A. And then that was where, you know, I met, you know, Dave Mustaine, and we put our group together, and, you know, for almost 20 years we did that, you know. But, you know, in the Midwest, and in a small town setting, you know, playing covers, trying to submit demos. The hardest thing was trying to get an agent, because, you know, you got to have an agent. I would try to just call bar owners and clubs and stuff. So I've been dealing with these guys, because they're a whole kind of cast of characters in themselves, you know, the bar owners and the promoters, and, you know, I mean, you think about it, they're taking a chance on a bunch of young, you know, risky musicians.
Right.
You know, you got to hand it to them to even put some money on the table for that is ballsy on their part.
Right.
But so they have kind of a way in which they work, and, you know, musicians generally, you know, oftentimes don't have their business head together, so they just think, hey dude, I just want to rock, I just want to play my music, you know. But, you know, you got to take care of contracts and money, and, you know, getting paid, and, you know, all that kind of stuff too. So I guess I've been lucky to have kind of dealt with that at an early age, so that even though, you know, once I got to California and we got things rolling with our band out there, I had already been traveling around a lot in the Midwest, and I understood it. Because there were some guys that I hooked up, you know, that I came across out in California. They'd never left California. Never even traveled outside the state. I'm like, the hell, who raised you? You know, I didn't understand that, you know. So I'd been on the road with, well, I can't say on the road, but I'd traveled with my family. I'd been out of state. I'd traveled with my bands. I'd done things. So I think those experiences season you a little bit. So that by the time I got to L.A. and I jumped in the Shark Tank and had to swim with the, you know, with the some of the nastiest of them out there, you know, that were hovering around L.A. We were lucky, because I understood that, you know, for us to pull it together and to really, you know, you have to hunker down as a team, you know, and that I guess that's probably why I, you know, stayed in that setting for as long as I did, is because I just know that, you know, and plus a lot of it's about momentum in any line of work, you know what I mean? You start to get your name out there, people start to know who you are, they know who your band is. Man, nothing feeds momentum like momentum, you know? And it's like, man, if that wind ever goes out of your sails, it's hard to boot up and get it going again. So I figured, look, we got a good thing going, we're happening, let's keep it rolling forward.
Right. So just basically keep going for what you. That's another thing. I'm like then I know there wasn't internet.
Right.
There wasn't all these different ways you could sell yourself, basically.
Yeah.
And now, you know, with Ustrive, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get these bands in these little towns in Minnesota and all these other little towns or anywhere,
right,
to be able to put their stuff on as video and audio,
right,
for the right people to see them, so they can get seen and get heard,
right,
and get signed. How do you think that's gonna? I mean, coming from back then, if you would have had something like that available to you, would that have been something you?
Oh, would have been great, because I mean, look, the basic business model and concept of how showbiz works is the same whether you're talking about $100 or $100,000. The concept's the same. You just add a few more zeros to the income. You better believe there's a few more zeros to the expenses. You know what I mean? So it all comes down to the same thing. So, you know, I think, look, I think the internet's great. I've embraced it right from the very beginning, you know, and of course there's a lot of naysayers and everything, but I mean, look what it did to the record business. It just shot a hole in their whole thing, and they're running around trying to put Band-Aids to keep the water from leaking out, until finally they had to realize that, look, you know, it's an archaic system and we got to really rethink how we do it. And now, you know, record companies are embracing it. I mean, to some degree, you know, the music business is like any business. It takes money to make money, you know, and that's why usually bands, I mean, I started on an independent record label, you know, with Combat Relativity Records, and then we got signed over to Capitol Records, and that moved that forward. So that we had this influx of money and people that knew what they were doing in the major label record system, and you know, that kind of being able to make videos and get on MTV and and have money to be able to afford to go out on long tours and get on bigger arena tours and things like that. You know,